Welcome back to the next episode of EOS exclusive interviews. Today I have the lovely Kate McDaid with us today. So Kate is a high performance nutrition specialist. She has a wealth of knowledge that's come from both her own playing experiences but also through education and her own work. So she's worked with a number, and correct me if I'm wrong here, a number of elite teams across the board, but also athletes on a one-to-one basis, kind of corporations, and then individuals that are simply just trying to live a healthier and kind of happier lifestyle as well. And she's also expanded her, kind of shared her knowledge on the topic of nutrition with the likes of programs on BBC, RTE, and also you've done some lecturing into Dublin, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, brilliant. So you can see definitely a lot of knowledge there to be shared, as well as her own sporting commitments with the likes of the Dublin Ladies and Irish basketball team. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay, really appreciate you giving us the time this morning. First of all, just the way I kind of like to start any kind of chat is just to get a bit of an understanding of how you've ended up in this kind of area. Like, where did the passion come from, and how have you ended up where you are today? Like, where did that start? Where did the passion for kind of performance and nutrition begin?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for the great intro. In absolute and reminded me of a few things. I did do that. But I suppose in terms of nutrition, and I suppose where that passion blossomed, so to speak, it probably goes back as far as secondary school. I got introduced to basketball when I started at the secondary school I went to. That was the sport at the time in the school. And I suppose initially, I would have played sport in primary school, but nothing hectic. So I remember when, they were coming around to try and round up the troops in first year to be like, get interested in basketball. And they were like, they're training 3 times a week. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I'm not giving up 3. But, I don't know what I thought I was doing at 12 years of age, but I was like, clearly thought I had loads for doing. But anyway, 3 days quickly became 7. And, that kind of, the ball got rolling there. So, from trying to make Dublin teams with basketball to then Irish squads, I would have gotten introduced to nutrition, I suppose, over those earlier years. And really then, so that kind of sparked an interest in like, okay, this can help me get an edge over someone else. Yeah. And then in 4th year, we had to do a professional placement. So I was very fortunate to get to follow a nutritionist around. This was though in the context of the general population. So she was going in delivering a workshop to Dublin bus drivers, is actually So then all of a sudden I was like, and my dad has diabetes as well. So I suppose between what I was seeing from her, what I've learned for myself through sport and performance, and indeed then, my dad having to pay attention to his diet, I was like, you know what, like this is super interesting. I wasn't great in school. Like I had no real interest. I wasn't very academic by any stretch.
Sports and orientated.
Yeah, I was like, what can I do sport-wise to get out of class?
I think
but this,
like most dogs. Like myself, definitely.
I was like, I'm definitely
I was like, that sounds like school.
So on that, I this was the first time ever that was kind of like a classroom where I could just like literally listen and take something in, and every time I heard it, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, right, this is what I want to do. The penny has dropped. Yeah. So from that point onwards, I knew, I suppose to show that it was the right thing as well, I started working my arse off in school. So translated the hard work on the basketball court to the kind of academic side of things, and kind of went from there. I ended up doing food science after I left secondary school. Yeah. Because I missed out on my points slightly for human nutrition dietetics. So did food science in UC for 4 years, and then went on to Loughborough University to do a master's in sport and exercise nutrition.
I'd say that was, Loughborough is a big sports university.
Oh yeah, it was
well,
class.
So I'd say that was insane. And did you play basketball over there when you were with them?
played basketball over there. Yeah.
Good experience.
It was amazing, yeah. So played there, studied, started my career over there. Actually, I got an internship with a nutrition consultancy there. So I was kind of finishing up my master's, I started that, and then worked in that consultancy for about 2 years, and then came back in 2017 and set up NutriKate. But I suppose the sporting element was kind of the driver, and then the other people started to fall into place.
No, I was thinking that, especially looking at kind of the things that you've done over the last couple of years, it's just like that. I think one thing that'll resonate with people, anyone that like watches this and is listening, is that, you know, this is stemmed from your own experience in sport, and that's obviously driven you. So, with that being said, so obviously you mentioned you played basketball at a very high level, and you played GAA at a very high level. So, what has it been like to, I suppose, get the chance to represent but Ireland with basketball, but also you played with the Dubs as well, is that right?
Yeah.
So what has that been? So what's it, firstly, representing the Dubs? Were you part of the 2019 panel? Or when was the last kind of, what was it been like representing the Dubs? Obviously such a stronghold in kind of GAA and football, especially men and women, so what's that been like?
Yeah, well, that was a bit of a funny one for me because I actually started working with them as their performance nutritionist in, was it 2017, 2018, I think, and worked with them for, I think, 4 years in that role. So I was now on the inside, and I never played football before. I played a bit in primary school. But I was going there, Croke Park, all out in Wednesday, like, obviously, even if you're not interested in sport, like, you can't but help get this buzz, like, it's just unlike anything else. Going into the dressing room, obviously you know how hard the girls have worked. You've worked your arse off as well. From a practitioner standpoint, you can see all the work that's been done from a managerial standpoint. So I was like, jeez. And I was working in men's football as well. I was working with Longford and senior men's team as well. So between the two, my brothers have been involved in Gaelic football too, so all through the years I would have worked with him, but it wasn't until I suppose I got completely entrenched in it that I was like, geez, like, I wouldn't mind giving this there. And I was seeing obviously the big days and obviously how hard, I suppose I had so much respect for the athletes because of everything that they sacrifice and all that they put in. So I started playing football with Crokes, Chemical Crokes Junior, just to keep fit while I was getting ready for the basketball season. Then I was like, I like this. I'm okay. I can catch the ball, I can run. I'm going to try intermediate next season like this. Kind of want to up the ante. And then I was like, right, I'll see
the internal competition.
I know. I have an issue more so than I used to. And then I was like, you know, obviously working with the girls and big days out in Crow Park and everything else. I was like, well, do you know what, like, let's try and see if I can make a senior team with Chemical. Because it's super competitive, massive club, super competitive, fabulous athletes on the senior team there. And I was like, right, if I can do this, hold my own, make a team there and make a starting position and keep that over the season, because we would have had a lot of Dublin players then coming back in the squad, so, you know, league and championship teams don't look the same. And I did that, and then I was like, right, let's give Dublin a go. I feel I can do this. I couldn't kick a ball, but I was like, I feel like I can do that.
I can run.
Yeah. So I did. I went in the year before last, what are we, 2023. So the 21 to 22 season. I went in November 21, was with the development squad there, and then obviously the main squad joins, and then they start making cuts. So made it past all that. I did a load of extra work because I'm not joking, like, I couldn't kick the ball. So I had so much extra training to do. But I did. I earned a number 9 jersey on that team for that season. Now, trying to run a business, trying to play at that level, completely burnt out. I was so riddled with anxiety just from, because you're so passionate about like, NutriKate's my baby. Obviously, I'm sacrificing so much to play football, and I love it. And, you know, there's obviously this hunger in me. And competitiveness, but it was like I was really stretching myself way too thin.
Like that training schedule in itself would be
like it's insane. Another job.
Yeah.
Like and there's so much reward from that, but I think just the point in my life that I'm at now, the personal goals that I want to achieve, for me the trade-off was too great. So I ticked the box, but I decided then to actually take a step away from sport then for this season anyway, and just get a few things. And
have you stepped away from basketball as well, or
for the moment? I'm training now in a gym close to me, doing some like kickboxing, just kind of get the aerobic element into it. And, so it's a bit of a transition, but to be honest, the flexibility and I suppose channeling all that energy into say business and my career feels like the best thing for me right now, because I'm not 25 anymore. So I kind of needed to take that on board.
Of course.
I'm getting to real life now. I have to be responsible for my actions. It's defo.
So then if you take, so obviously, okay, so you've played top level GAA in Ireland, you've played top level basketball, so you've been in and around sport for quite some time. How has that translated into your work? Obviously, so you've been working around these athletes and then you became one of them. How have you found that keeping yourself to a high standard of training and being an athlete yourself, how do you feel like that's translated into the work that you've done?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's more lessons I've learned in sport that I can still bring into the work I do. But definitely, like, time management is a huge element that I've brought from one into the other. My work ethic, that's something I pride myself greatly on. And even in any sport that I've done, I've never been a talented athlete or a very skillful one, but what you can't question my work rate. And so I've taken great pride in that. So I've brought that into kind of the workspace. I think when you're playing at any kind of decent level of sport, people are very clear of their roles within a team. And so I've tried to bring that into the work setting. What is my role within this environment? What do I need from my colleagues in this environment? And I suppose setting clear standards, so then we all know what's what. And we're very certain if something or something is falling short.
I found that, even as out of school, you get that, like, people who play sport, it translates into more either academic or professional environment 100%. And then in terms of understanding, I feel like, do you feel like you gained quite a really strong understanding of what they needed from a nutrition? So from your actual job perspective and understanding what the girls needed and what athletes need when they're under that, like you've mentioned obviously being in Croke Park, like those insane events and matches, like, do you feel like because you've been in those environments, in those elite environments, you understand what players might need more from their nutrition, from what you're actually providing them, or do you think that has been a massive benefit for you in terms of the rest of your career?
It's definitely an experience that won't, leave me short, to say the least. But I think I'm quite empathetic as an individual and as a practitioner anyway. But I suppose it gave me a newfound appreciation for just how much demand is placed on the athlete, particularly in the environment of like Dublin GAA. Like, the resources available to athletes are great, but also, the demands are also phenomenal. So it's, I suppose, gave me a newfound appreciation for meeting the player where they're at, and also recognising just how much everything eats into your time, into your week, because it's not a question of like people rocking up to training and, having maybe a meeting after, people are going home and mulling over like how, because it's so competitive. So people are like, going home, they're like, geez, like thinking about literally going through every second of that session, being like, could I have done better here? And, you know, what is this coach thinking of me? Am I, you know, so all that headspace.
The mental battle takes up time as well as the physical.
And it's so draining. So then it's kind of like, okay, well, where is this athlete at in their career, taking in all this facets, like from, you know, gym work to pitch work to video analysis to meetings, whatever, body composition, everything. You know, what do they really need to know at this point in time? And I would have approached my work in that way anyway, but I think being on the other side, I was like, whoa, like this is serious.
It's like, I knew this was happening, but I didn't realise just to what extent it was.
I thought I knew, and then I was on the other end of it, and I was like, oh, holy cow, this is wild.
So then, I suppose, you've obviously moved on, and you've worked in you said you worked in the UK to start, and you've come home and you've set up NutriKate. So I suppose for people that don't maybe know NutriKate yet, what is the business? What do you do? What's the foundation of what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so ultimately we're trying to, you know, give individuals an insight or teams an insight into, you know, what it can look like when we get things right, when things fall into place. So we're very much, you know, about meeting the individual where they're at and looking for those kind of easy wins at this point in time in their life, and ultimately educating the person, the team, the corporate entity, so that people are in a better position. Like we're trying to cut through the fat that is surrounding nutrition. Like there's so much information out there. It's also accessible to us, which is fabulous in one sense. But like with the good comes the bad. It's so confusing. 1 minute you're told this, you know, maybe 10 minutes later you've been told something else, depending on where you're looking. So it can be super confusing. So we're trying to take that out of it and provide, I suppose, information that's super practical and makes sense. So we work with, you know, teams. So from, you know, Dublin GAA, like my colleague was working with the Dublin Ladies, who won the All-Ireland final the weekend, or the week before last. And it was just fabulous. I was in with the Kildare senior men's football and hurling teams. We work with different universities and their sports scholars. We go in and deliver workshops, seminars, cook-alongs to corporate entities. And then we work with individuals on a one-to-one basis. That's your, you know, someone maybe who just wants to improve their health. Someone else maybe wants to lose some weight.
So you're all encompassing. It's from the top elite athletes to somebody who just wants to be a healthier individual.
Exactly, and I think that's why it's so important that we are super switched on and can recognise who's in front of us. Because, you know, within a squad, you're going to have massive discrepancy between what each athlete will need in terms of their starting point. And you're obviously looking for them to hit certain principles, but where they're hitting those principles can look very different. So then obviously taking someone who just wants to maybe improve their health or, you know, incorporate more sustainable and beneficial habits, you know, that's going to look different. They don't need to, you know, cross all the T's and dot all the I's the way maybe athletes.
It doesn't have to be as kind of stringent. It doesn't have to be as strict on terms of what they have to follow. For somebody who just wants to be a healthier individual.
Yeah, exactly. And even with certain athletes, like we mentioned about kind of the strain that they're put under. And again, when you're looking at GAA, it's different when it's someone's profession, but when it's, you know, GAA, like all those men, women, they're in jobs, they're in college.
Of course.
You know, they've got families.
It's external stresses. Like it's not just focusing on the sport. There's so much other going on.
And you know, football or hurling or camogie is a large part of their life, but we also need to consider that, you know, they're doing other bits to pay bills and to, you know. So it's again really important that that is all taken into account. So again, it's, you're trying to give them the best support from a dietary standpoint, but there's no point in providing support that puts them under more strain, because that's not going to benefit their performance either.
Of course. So I suppose then, is it primarily kind of GAA that you've worked in? Is there other sports that you'd love to kind of get into and work in? Is there any other areas of kind of performance and sport that you have quite an interest in, that you'd like to explore outside of kind of GAA as sports or kind of performance?
Yeah, well, we're really lucky in that we have actually, dabbled in a lot of sports. GAA probably would be the primary stake, but from working with the likes of Trinity and their sporting scholars, like, we've been exposed to boxers, rowers, rugby players, and we've worked with some teams within rugby, rowing, and I'm very fortunate to work with Maynooth University and their golf scholarship program. So that kind of brings in a whole new dimension. So you're dealing with, a team environment and whatnot, but then also you're dealing with individuals. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, because obviously, like, GAA player, rugby player, golfer, like, surely, is there massive differences? Or is, like, the foundations fairly similar in terms of what your advice would be to them? Or is there really big differences in terms of plans, nutrition, and how they need to go about things with the different sports? Do you find there's a big difference in it?
Well, they're similar from a foundation standpoint in that meeting the athlete where they're at, and how can this person in front of me get the most from a dietary standpoint to perform at that their best. So the foundation is similar. There'll be more overlap from like rugby and Gaelic than there would be, compared to your golfer, but ultimately you're trying to incorporate sustainable and positive habits within their lifestyle. And you're trying to get them comfortable and confident putting things together. Or if they aren't going to do that, making sure that they know where to look at to meet their needs on a dietary standpoint.
So the kind of baseline of kind of everything is making it tailored to that individual lifestyle, the way they operate, and then on top of that, once everyone's kind of found what works for them, it's about then, okay, what do they need for their specific sport? Would that be the right way kind of looking at it?
You want individuals to have like a solid foundation, and sometimes they come to you and they're like ticking all those boxes, and then we can jump into maybe the juicier stuff. But depending on that starting point, previous experiences, and also their priorities at the time as well, and will influence just where they're going to start with you.
Amazing. Okay, so then for ourselves, and I was kind of chatting to you a little bit about this before we kind of came on camera, is just that about we have a couple of different kind of segments of people which kind of fits that kind of follow us, and it kind of fits with what you've already said in terms of those different tiers of people that just want to be healthy all the way up to the elite athletes. So I suppose one thing that I'd be really interested to understand and know about is kind of maybe some tips and pieces of advice that you might have around the different tiers, but also like preparation and recovery and stuff like that. So in terms of, if we look at that kind of maybe the younger athlete who is either in development squads or is trying to get into development squads, and the goal is very much to become either professional in, say, rugby or something like that, or hit that elite level of kind of GAA hurling. What would your kind of advice, I suppose, be in terms of kind of broadly speaking, taking care of themselves? Obviously, we've spoken about finding what works for them, but like in terms of the main focus points, maybe 2 or 3 kind of focus points within their nutrition and keeping kind of at a high level, what should they focus on?
Well, to be honest, when you're talking about like that kind of youth athlete, usually they're playing on multiple teams. or they're pulled even between different sports. I know, as they kind of get a little bit older, that maybe narrows somewhat, but they will, a huge demand is placed on them. So very often, they're under hitting the mark from an energy standpoint. So, obviously, they need energy to feel what they're doing and to perform at their best. And they're going to need energy to rock up to school and know what's going on and be able to retain some sort of information, whether they want to or not. But it's kind of a prerequisite. But also, they're still growing and developing. So that requires energy in and of itself too. So I think the key thing for those athletes is to, make sure that they're, using, every opportunity that's posed to them to capitalize on that. So, when you're looking like practice or something that comes up time and time again, particularly underage athletes, I don't know what the big, barrier is there, but I suppose it's, they like to sleep, they're busy, they want to stay in bed as long as they can, they don't, maybe they're not hungry, but that's a prime example of where they can, they have an opportunity in front of them to help from a recovery and a fueling standpoint. So, that doesn't need to be a bowl of porridge in the morning, but it could be a smoothie or a pint of milk or some fruit, like, you're trying to find a compromise there. So, then you've got your mid-morning snack or your little break out of school, lunch, after school, dinner, and post-training meal or evening snack. So it's like recognizing these windows of opportunity and making sure that they're capitalizing on it. Another big area is when they come in from evening training. I'm absolutely knackered. I've been up since 7 a.m. I've been training, maybe twice today already, and I just want to go to bed. And so it's again like, a lot of them won't be driving. So if you're traveling, can we have something in your gear bag where you can just eat it on your way? It's ready to rock. You get in, you have your shower, and you go to bed. It's not. So it's like trying to find a compromise there, but recognizing, I think, that your body needs energy to function. It needs energy to grow. And it needs, energy to sustain the training that you're doing. If you want to be the best athlete, and if you want to get the most from your training session, even if you're not focused on the competitiveness, you just love being around the team with your friends, more than likely you still want to put our best foot forward.
You still need the energy to actually bring to the training session, even if you're just there more as a social aspect.
And to enjoy it. There's no point in rocking up and you've no energy and you're like, oh my God, I'm going through the motions. So you need energy from the fueling standpoint, and also your body needs energy then to recover. So it's like appreciating that, okay, well, if I'm going to play multiple sports or, play on different teams, if I'm playing up at a higher level, there's a massive jump, as you go from underage into maybe more senior, or even playing from like, I remember being like cadet, which I think was under 16, and then playing with the senior team as well. Like they're very different. Like it's quicker, the hits are harder, everything else. So just appreciating that, like I'm actually demanding a lot of myself here, so I want to make sure it's supported.
I know from my own experience growing up, it's just like you probably don't realise at that age that, you training 1-2 times a day, every day of the week is actually a huge amount. Just because you're young doesn't mean it's not using up a huge amount of energy. Like
exactly.
But so then in terms of, I suppose, I think something that people really love at that age and love to hear is kind of like, where do you, like my always thing was like, my thing was like, where do I start? Like, what is a baseline? Like, I always used to be told by, like, say, coaches, like, you need to have recovery, you need to have your stuff for after training, you need to have, you need to prepare for games better. And like, now I wouldn't play very hard rugby now. I'll have a rugby now, but like you'd hear some lads come down having a full, they'd have a fry before the game, and they'd be grand, and then you'd have some lads like in my house, like my preparation compared to my brother's like, he's got his smoked salmon and he's got his scrambled eggs, and he's like eats it. He's very, very stringent in how he sticks to it. So what would your I suppose maybe some kind of tips or possible like meals that for say preparing for a game, like coming into a match day, like whether kind of starting from the night before, like I'm always like the night before I need to have a big meal. That's where I'm going to get a lot of my energy from because I'm not a huge person to eat solids before a game. So, what is your advice in terms of maybe some types of foods that will give you that energy that you're talking about as you're coming into maybe a match week, match day?
Is this just in general or
I suppose,
still,
yeah, it's still for those kind of younger athletes, because I do think that's probably a big struggle, is that, I think, there's a lot of information out there, so trying to figure out what is the right stuff for a younger athlete as they prep. So, like, what in that prep meal, those prep meals, what are probably some good starting points for them to be looking into?
Brilliant. So, I think a key thing is when it comes to match day, so we'll take maybe Gaelic football, camogie hurling, we'll take that example maybe. We don't want to try anything different or try anything new. Like you alluded to a few different scenarios there where people have their own method at it. They're happy and we'll just leave them be. So we definitely don't want to, try something that we haven't tried out before.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to any game, you have put in X amount of hours from a training standpoint.
Yeah.
So you have to turn up and perform at training. And to do that, you're going to have some sort of meal beforehand. Mm-hmm. So learn from those occasions. And that can work in terms of when you're having your last meal as well. So, we normally recommend last meal before a game or in the training, anywhere between the 2 to 4 hour mark. Okay. That's quite a big discrepancy. Yeah. So for some people, 2 hours is like happy days, off you go. Yeah. Other people, and you mentioned there, you don't really like solids maybe the day of the game. Yeah. And so probably appetite isn't there, maybe nerves play a role there as well. So what do I do with training? What sits well, what doesn't, and start tailoring it that way. Okay. So in terms of the ideal or what we normally look for in that kind of pre-match meal is carbohydrate based. They're going to support high intensity exercise. They are the king when it comes to supporting your performance. Yeah. So we definitely want to make sure that those guys are present. We would normally recommend like 2 fist sizes or maybe half the plate of carbohydrates. Okay. Want some sort of protein there to manage kind of appetite, support your muscles as well. And we want to minimize any kind of heavy, kind of creamy sauces, or we don't want to load up that fiber in that meal either. So both those aspects can affect the rate of digestion, which, there's nothing worse than you're like running out. You can just feel that meal sitting. Exactly. Yeah, we've all been there. It's not a good time. So we try and limit that. Yeah. So again, if you're trying something out and that happens to you in training, you've got a bit more grace than if you're going out obviously to try and compete.
So almost use your field training, your physical training as your nutrition training as well, like for match day.
100%. So that would be, the first kind of protocol. So in terms of, bringing maybe that suggestion to real life, that is your lean mint spaghetti bolognese, it is your chicken stir fry. Yeah. We, as I mentioned, want something that's going to provide energy, so carbohydrates, and also that's going to contain a high quality protein source. If you're playing, and a lot of underage athletes will be playing like really early, so they don't want to get up at 6 a.m. for a 10 a.m. start time, which is quite fair. So in that case, well then, we might look at, the evening before in terms of adding maybe some extra carbohydrates, so rice, pasta, noodles to your dinner, maybe having a bowl of cereal before you go to bed to help on that front. And then in the morning time, we don't want, particularly for female athletes, actually any athlete, we don't want them going out without having anything to eat. Yes. So it's, a it might just be a banana with some nut butter. And it doesn't need to be anything too heavy, particularly for somebody who's suffering from nerves. But we want to get something in there to kind of to help the colours for sure.
Okay, excellent. So then I suppose if we look at after the game and recovery, obviously putting back in the energy that you've used is very, very important. And I suppose, again, I suppose I can only really refer to my own and the experiences I have with players that I know as well. But, some like solids, some don't like solids. Obviously after doing, say, maybe it's an 80-minute rugby match or it's a GAA game, what's your kind of advice around that? Like, what would similar to what we've just talked about there, like, what's the importance of, is it getting those carbs in straight away to refuel that energy? Is it, you need lots of protein for the recovery? Like, what's the focus point there for a young athlete who has just played possibly their second match of the weekend or something like that? So where should they start?
Yeah, so, it's definitely important that, I suppose there's a few elements that we want to, and we'd normally look, I suppose, the 4 hours of recovery. So from a dietary standpoint, we're looking at refueling, so carbohydrates, we definitely want to get some of them on board. We want to rehydrate, so they've sweated, they've lost fluid, we want to get some fluids back on board, and then repair, so that's your protein elements. The fourth hour would be rest, so like making sure you're having some downtime, making sure you're getting some sleep is also going to need your recovery. And I think the big thing with recovery is it is ongoing. So like, yes, we want to capitalise post-training, but like you still have the rest of the day to make sure that you're minding yourself too, and going into the next day, really before you're training again or playing again. So something actually like really simple, like to hit all of those 3 markers, so your carbs, your protein, your fluid, like something like particularly for underage athletes, your chocolate milk, your Muju milk, or whatever it might be, flavoured milk, they've got, it's sugar, carbohydrates, and they've got, it's largely fluid, so, water-based, got electrolytes in there too, so aiding that rehydration process. And you've also got some protein in there as well. So it's homemade smoothie with like Greek yogurt or milk in there as well. Some of your favourite fruits, bananas, and put some oats in there. That's a nice compromise for athletes who maybe don't have much of an appetite. Or if they're travelling now and waiting an hour or so before they're going to eat again. Exactly. I suppose where those things aren't useful is if you don't have far to go home, and then when you get in, you're not going to eat that dinner or that lunch that's going to prepare food. And then maybe we might change the options there. You can get protein yogurt pouches now, having that with like your cereal bars, and some water can be useful as well. So they're kind of easy wins that you can have in your gear bag, ready to rock.
Easy snacks.
Exactly, ready to rock. Particularly for someone who struggles with appetite, and then an hour, whatever later, have your similar to your pre-training. Carbohydrates, protein. We want some vegetables in there. They're going to help with your recovery as well, believe it or believe it not. So, it's your chicken stir fries, even beans, scrambled eggs, toast, and some veg. It doesn't need to be complicated.
Really?
And I think, athletes, even if you're like, 14, 15, even younger, like we've done cook-alongs with like under 12s. I know parents are helping, but, if you get comfortable even making yourself an egg or knowing what can go into the microwave, like you can take a bit of responsibility there and know, like, God, I'm able to do this by myself. I'm able to progress now in the sport that I love. I'm able to make sure that my body is where I want it to be. It's adapting to the training that I'm doing. It's ready to go for my next session or my next game. So trying to chip away and build up your portfolio in the kitchen is one of our
become a chef.
we don't need Jamie Oliver, but we, Can't let go slowly.
So then, if we move kind of away from those athletes that are kind of like looking to kind of go professional or play at elite level, like I think one thing that I'm particularly interested in, I think a lot of our followers do kind of fall into this category, and I think probably a lot of your followers probably do as well, is that, you know, person who wants to hold themselves to quite a high level of training, but also has a family, has a job, has a life, and, you know, is trying to just balance everything. And, you know, they might have a pretty strong understanding of what they need to get in terms of fuel and stuff, but is there any tips or pieces of advice that you might have on how that person can achieve what they need to achieve in terms of hitting their nutrition goals throughout the week, whilst trying to balance training at a good level, work, maybe a family, whatever that might be?
Yeah. So there's a few things here. So I think one of the big contenders is like to be very clear on why you're doing what you're doing and what your priorities are.
Yeah.
I think it makes it very easy then to not be ridiculously hard on yourself when it's actually not appropriate for your overarching goals and things. So I think a bit of reflection there, like, and again, that means that you need to take a few minutes out to actually be with your own thoughts, know what you want to do, and really put into perspective why you're doing what you're doing. Is it serving where you want to be, where you want to get to? So I think knowing what you want and, you know, why you're doing what you're doing and making sure that's very clear is key. The next big thing is, as you mentioned, people have a lot on their plate. They're trying to pack in an awful lot over the course of a week. Planning and preparation gives some people like the heebie-jeebies. I think it's because, you know,
getting the plastic little plastic bowls out for, and you've got your 7 done for the week.
Well, we don't need to get that up, but even just to the point of what the hell does the week look like versus, oh my god, a week's gone by here and I'm just like going through the motions. I'm just like literally like somersaulting in from one day to another. So again, figuring out, you know, acknowledging what part of the week do I, we were talking about coffee, I love getting coffee from X cafe. I normally do that once a week. Can I use that as a point to, you know, take 10 minutes to look at the next 5, 6, 7 days and go, what the hell's in my diary? Am I eating out? You know, do I have to bring the kids here? You know, where do I have a bit of downtime? So that's when you go to do your shop or order your shopping online or whatever you do, you know what needs to go in the basket. We're not getting to halfway through the week and you're like, oh god, I need to go to the shop again. Or we're not going to the shop multiple times a day. Because that might seem like not that much of a chore to certain people. But actually when you weigh up like how much time that's taken out of your week, you know, we can be more effective and efficient. Same goes for, you might enjoy cooking, maybe you don't, but you know it's a means to an end. So it's like, where do I have a bit more time to do the cooking? Can I, you know, make a big batch of something? Anything that you don't use can be thrown into the freezer, can be used the following week. So you need that moment, or like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't know what it's going to take, everyone will look different, to plan, to see those gaps. So you can, I suppose, prep when you've got a bit more time in your hands versus when you're more time poor. And that's why it's really important to know what your priorities are and, you know, what your why is as such. I think that kind of gets bandied about, but it is important to know.
Well, of course, like if you don't know the reason for why you're doing stuff, it's very hard to plan towards it. Like, you know, you need the goal at the end of the day, and also need to know your priority. And I think what you said there about knowing what your priorities are, so that you're not being too hard on yourself. I think that's quite common. Like we were talking to Orla earlier in the week about it, and she was saying similar. You know, people, and you were saying it yourself in sport as well. Like people overanalyze a lot, and you know, it can be very hard on yourself. So when you have a clear objective and understand what the priority is, that takes pressure off as well.
And I think it's super important to acknowledge that, like, you don't need to take giant leaps. Like, at the end of the day, your success is going to be determined on what you're doing consistently. So, like, very often that extra bit of fruit that you're asking someone to put in, because it seems so minimal, they're like, what difference is that going to make? But over time, all that stuff adds up. So that's why, you know, it's not being afraid of the baby steps. I think when you've a lot on your plate, there's a lot going on, you're trying to pack a lot in. Like, if you're trying to do 180s left, right and centre, that's not sustainable. And then maybe it'll work for a week, 2 weeks, and then you're back on your backside and you're like, I need to start again. So it's, you will get momentum. What you're adding in, you know, that's manageable and sustainable and that fits, that will become your norm. And then you build on that. It might take a little bit longer, but like, again, it's been super clear on where am I trying to get to? And is what I'm doing conducive to where I'm trying to get to?
And avoiding burnout and stuff like that.
Yeah, because like that's almost like, now we're gone maybe the other way where, you know, people are afraid to do too much of anything. But it's, you know, burnout was almost like a badge of honour. Where actually, no, it's a terrible time. You're all over the shop. It's, you know, it's not something that we want to get to, nor do we need to get to. Of course, there's going to be periods in our life where, you know, you're kind of pushing the boat out a little bit more than maybe is sustainable, but provided that's within a certain timeline and you know it's your timeline, it's not your life.
There's an end. There's an end point.
That's different to you trying to, like, again, as I mentioned, somersaulting in from one day to another, and you're never pulling yourself back out.
That's just life. I completely get you. I suppose then the kind of last area then is just looking at the, you know, standard person who just wants to be fit and healthy, and you're saying you've worked with them as well, and I suppose there might be a bit of crossover because at the end of the day, you know, those foundations are the same. But in terms of a person who just, you know, it could be an older person, it could be a younger person who's just not really kind of sports focused, and they just want to be healthy, and they just want to, you know, eat right and just have their body healthy so that they can enjoy kind of their life and they can go do their travels, explore whatever they want to actually do, but it's not a very sports training focused person. What would your main tips be to someone like that? What should they focus on? Should it be the planning and that type of stuff? Does it need to be as intense, or should it be certain types of foods to make sure that your body's, you know, well-oiled and running properly? Like, what should they really focus on if you just want to be a person who wants to be healthy but just enjoy your life?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, like, fundamentally, like, we're all that person. That is the foundation. So, you know, and then whether you're going to try and do a marathon or compete, you know, at a high standard, that's the extra layers that we build upon. So, you know, in the instance of someone who literally just wants to do the best, be happy as can be, I think it's important to, I suppose, what am I trying to say here? I think it's important that I've actually had a massive mind blank when you were speaking. I was like, I know what I'm coming in here with. And my brain is just completely unnerved.
I suppose it's just about, I suppose, from kind of friend, family and sports people that I've worked with, it's kind of like I have a lot of people there who, like I have some friends who are just happy out eating whatever they eat, and that's absolutely fine. That's where they find their joy. Then I have some other people who are just like, you know, I'm not a runner. I don't like running. I don't want to go. I don't really like the gym, but I do like to go for a hike and a walk and stuff. So it's almost like casual exercise. And they're like, I try to eat healthy, but like, you know, again, like, where do I start? Like, what food should I be eating just to be almost casually just tapping away and keeping my body healthy? Like,
my brain's like, actually, my point is returned. Thank God. I was there. I was like, oh my God, like just like air in my head. So excuse me, we're back.
Bloopers.
Yeah, I was like, oh. I literally was like, so you were speaking. I was like, yeah, no,
she was looking at me, but just like looking through.
And I was like, and then I was like, it's really important. I was like, there's just air, like air.
Someone just turned off the brain.
Yeah, unplugged me. Yeah. Okay, we're back. So on that note, framework is super important. So, I suppose anything that we've discussed today, there's an element where it ties in. So, like, if we're trying to just support our health, you know, give our body by and large what it needs, give our mind, you know, what it needs, we want to make sure that, you know, what we're doing day in, day out can support that. So, like, never any harm to include plenty of plants in your diet. So what I mean by that is, you know, your fruit and vegetables. You know, when you're cooking, try different herbs, spices, or if you're someone who hates cooking and you're like, I'm using jars of whatever I get in the shop because I want my food to taste nice, fine. Well, where's the happy medium there? Well, can we get some extra veg into that dish, for example?
Yeah.
Whole grains, you know, legumes, so your lentils, chickpeas, and so on. Like just adding things like that into meals that you're probably already making, and because you know plants packed full of different nutrients to help the cause. If we can get a bit of variety in our diet, happy days.
Yeah.
There's not one diet that's the holy grail, and I think that's really important to recognise. So it's about, you know, health is multifaceted. So what your diet and what your framework encompasses has to feed into the rest of your health or well-being.
And your well-being. Yeah, I think well-being could go away from just everything. Happiness.
Exactly. Like food makes up a large part of our day. It makes up a large part of our week, our life. So you want to be eating stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of food out there that we enjoy that probably isn't overly nutritious. And if we were to try and survive on that, we won't be supporting our health effectively. But if we were, you know, never to include it, particularly something that we enjoy, well, then we're maybe putting ourselves, affecting our health in another manner because we're under stress or we're, you know, overthinking something that doesn't really need to be, you know, much thought into. You know, so I suppose it's just making sure that, you know, the framework of your diet is, you know, including variety, that it's, you know, adding in foods that are nutrient dense, but you've got room to, you know, add food that isn't overly nutritious, but it means that you can do something nice with maybe friends, family, or, you know, if it hits the spot when you need it to hit the spot. So I think that's super important. That, you know, your health can be extremely flexible. Like, you know, your diet can be very flexible to support your health. But we want to, as often as we can, and obviously the occasions, maybe you go on holidays where you're staying with someone and, you know, you might be able to do things you normally do, and that's fine. We're looking at the bigger picture. Like you've got 365 days in a year. A week here or 2 weeks there isn't going to... Yeah, exactly. You're not going to kill overnight. So just perspective is really important, I think.
Excellent. So the last thing I want to ask, and it's almost a bit of it's maybe a little bit of a shorter kind of question, is you guys obviously with NutriKate are based, your advice is, from what I understand, is based on kind of like peer review and scientific kind of research that's happening at the moment, and that's keeping up to date with what's happening. So with that in mind, one of the things that I always find funny is, you know, these superfoods, and like every couple of like months or years there's like a kind of new superfood, and there's something else that people have found that are really healthy. I know black pudding, I think, was at one stage, my mum was like, that's a superfood, you gotta eat it. I was like, great, so she was putting it in everything. But at the moment, what's the kind of, with that like research and so, what would kind of the big kind of most popular kind of foods be at the moment for, I don't know, energy, and what's something that, I don't know how I'm meant to phrase this question, I've actually gone backwards on it, but essentially, is there any kind of new research that has kind of introduced, say, a new kind of diet or kind of food type to focus on, that it would be either carbohydrates, like good for carbs, or good for like protein, high in protein, or something that people might not know about, but is kind of more recently kind of become quite popular?
To be honest, like I think when we're looking at it, I suppose they're looking at what's in front of us, like a Mediterranean style diet, you know, it seems to be something that comes up time and time again in terms of supporting health markers and so on. So really you're looking at, you know, and we alluded to plants, and including that, like really including plenty of plants in your diet and layering that up then with foods that you enjoy. But I think that's probably the big aim. You know, even when you look at things like gut health and so on, the more variety we can get for things like plants and so on, the better kind of our gut environment is. Yeah. And that can have an impact on our overall well-being too. So I think that's probably something that's best to consider. There's no one food that's going to sort our problems. I think that's really important to recognise. And, you know, people, you definitely heard of bandage about, you know, one apple isn't going to make you healthy. It's the same with like
an apple a day.
Yeah.
Doctor away.
And one bar of chocolate is going to mean you're unhealthy. Like we don't work like that. So it's again go back to what are we doing on a consistent basis? What is the framework of our diet looking like? And usually including, you know, more plants there is a good thing. And then you know you add your animal-based products on top of it if you enjoy those foods and you know and so on. But ultimately. Getting variety on that front, I think, isn't a bad shout.
Amazing. Well, we'll finish it there. So thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. I think hopefully for anyone that's watching, but also for myself, just as a sports person myself and someone that likes to stay a little bit healthy here and there. So thank you very much. Thank you for anyone that was watching. Of course, as always, if you liked watching our video and want to learn a little bit more about EOS, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, please don't be afraid to subscribe to our channel as well. So thank you very much, and we will chat to you again in our next episode. Cheers!